What is the hardest part of adulthood so far? I feel like I just became an adult this year. No, for real. Like, I have my own place, I have a job, I pay bills. And I feel like I didn't feel like I was an adult. Maybe in college, because there's still that bubble of like, my parents were still helping me out.
You're not an adult in college.
Yeah, you're not. Well, no, some kids in college are doing that. Some kids, it's like they're paying their way, they're doing everything. They don't have that support system.
Absolutely.
And it's like, now I do, but I think the hardest part for me is like, you don't have like a curriculum. You don't have like, this is what you should study tonight. This is what you do tonight. Like, every day it's like you kind of have to prioritize what matters, and you don't know if you're doing it right. You don't have like a grade or report card that's like, oh, you did that job well today, A+. So it's just like you're like you're figuring everything out on your own, and it's hard because everything else was figured out before you, and you're kind of, it's like you don't know until maybe a year later this didn't work, and you kind of feel like time was wasted, or you don't know until a year later where you're like, oh, finally I'm seeing the results, and it's hard to be patient.
But I think we have to define like what adulthood means, right? Because like isn't that different for different people? So like how would you define adulthood, right? Like is adulthood like paying your bills and like having a full-time job?
I feel like that's an interesting question, because am I in adulthood now? Because I feel like I'm in adulthood even though I have a full-time job, I pay my rent, pay my cable, I pay my energy, I don't pay my phone bill.
I don't pay insurance.
I don't pay my phone bill. Does that take away from my adulthood? Or, you know, I feel like I'm paying all these bills, it feels like.
I think you're adulthood when everything is on your own terms. Like, it's not like your parents are telling you what to do, or
that's true.
I think you're deciding life on your own terms, and you don't have any outside influence. It's like all you. And I think
so. In school, do you feel like you have entered adulthood because like your parents aren't like controlling?
So I didn't feel like that. Like it's a funny story. I went to orientation. You know when you go to orientation at college and they say what major you pick and you go to the colleges. I was like, I want to do international affairs because I just like geography and I like learning about the world. My dad was like, that's cute, but you're gonna pick accounting because he was accounting and do that. So I feel like even in college stuff was decided.
Your dad was like that?
Yeah, like I went to orientation with me, and I felt like even in college. I had so much family pressure that I did a major for 3 years I didn't want to do because that's just what I was taught to do. That's what I was taught. This is how you make a good living. This is how you make a stable life for yourself. And it was hard to just say, and I get it, you're an adult in college, but it was just hard for me to believe that on my own I could do what I want to do with marketing or do what I want to do with a so-called soft degree that people would say. So like 3 years in, when I could have been learning what I love, exploring, not stressing myself out, not like driving myself crazy to do something I don't like to do, I felt that much pressure and that much influence on my life from my parents that I did something I didn't want to do. And there are people who spend their years doing things because their family said it was okay, or there's a tradition they're trying to follow, or there's some kind of like, I don't know, person they're trying to impress, and you would think it gets easier with age, but it doesn't. The longer you stay in, the harder it's to get out of that like mindset. So.
Right. So, but
it's just trusting yourself. That's the hard part, trusting yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what I was kind of getting to, right? Like, I think in some ways, like, adulthood is kind of like when you're not relying on other people to like define what you're doing, and so. Like, I can definitely relate to what you're talking about. Like, your parents kind of, like, defining things for you, right? Like, at a really young age, you're expected to, like, know what you want to be when you grow up, right? And it's like, where do you get that notion from? Like, typically, it's your parents, right? So it's like, I feel like in some ways, like, for me, adulthood was really, like, when I broke out of that mold, right? Like, when I stopped allowing myself to be defined by what their expectations were for me. And when I allowed myself to, like, say, okay, I know this is what you expected me to do. I know you thought I was going to be a doctor, but, like, medicine's not for me. While it was for you and grandma and auntie and, you know, uncle. Like, all of y'all want to be nurses and doctors and stuff, but I have to divert, right? I have to take this other plan. And so I would actually say, like, me going to college was the moment I actually felt like an adult. Like, yeah, because it was me like demanding to my mom that like I'm not going to settle for like her making decisions for me anymore. And because she like was so overprotective and like always taking, you know, feeling like, you know, I know what's best, so like I'm gonna move you here and this is where you're gonna live and this is what you're gonna do. Like I kind of like went behind her back and like decided I was gonna apply to a school in a different state, and I did that, and I told her when I knew I was accepted, and I packed as much as I could in my car and I drove to that college and said like, this is it, like, you know, and I was having to figure things out on my own. That's when I was like, you know, paying rent and like responsible for everything. And it was kind of like a shock to me, because then it became like my mom asking me for help in some things, right? Like asking me for advice in certain things. And I think like adulthood is like this abstract thing that we don't really understand what it is, and so we're like put here and we're like, okay, this must be what adulthood feels like. I don't like it, like take it back.
Exactly.
return where's my receipt?
How do I unsubscribe?
But it's like it's not something we can really run away from, right?
Yeah.
So like how do we embrace that, and how do we make the best out of what we have in our sense of adulthood, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, I agree with you. Like, I feel like the hardest part of adulthood is like realizing that this is your life for the rest of your life, you know? There's no going back to your parents. There's no going back to relying on so and so. Like, this is your life, and you have to carve your path, and you have to like pay bills, and you have to like show up to work every day. Like, I feel like that's something that I'm adjusting to. Yeah. It's just like with class, it's like, oh, I don't feel like going to class today. There were those moments where it's like, you know, I don't feel like going to class today. I won't go. But it's not like I don't feel like going to work today. I won't go. Like, you have to go to work.
I mean, but that's the thing, though.
Yeah.
There are going to be consequences.
There are consequences in adulthood.
I mean, there's consequences in school, too. It's just not.
But you had a semester
bad,
to restart.
You know?
I feel
always
like in
had a fresh
school,
I think
it
that's
wasn't
what it
that
is.
many consequences because I didn't like miss class that much. It was like,
Okay. Because I don't know if you ever had one of those classes where, like, for every day that you're, like, miss class or you're late, they, like, deduct points and stuff like that.
And I still miss it.
But see, I guess it's the consequences, right? Then maybe that's the thing, right?
I think
It's
the
a type
thing
of
was
consequences.
even if you went really wild and like just had a bad semester, like 1.8 GPA, in college it always felt like you could redeem yourself. I got next semester, or next year we're gonna be a better year. It's not like that in adulthood. You know, next month is a new month. It's not like that. If I don't pay rent this month, there's no new month. They don't just let you like try. Oh, we're gonna try it again. Like, so it just felt like things are dire, and it feels like I gotta get it right now all the time, and it feels like there's no room for mistakes. And it might be a bit of pressure we put on ourselves or pressure from society, but I think we took for granted in college that this was a space or a bubble to like make mistakes.
It allows for mistakes.
And we were so
I'm about to go back to undergrad, everybody.
and we were so hard on ourselves to not make it. We didn't let ourselves make it, and now the pressure just builds now. So
The pressure is there, I feel like, in adulthood, especially with social media these days. It's like, so and so is doing this, or so and so is doing this, and it's like, oh, like I have to like make myself better. I have to prove that I went to college for a reason. I have to prove that I'm living my best life, you know? So I feel like social media definitely adds that pressure to our adulthood.
And I think another pressure, and I think this is very unique to Black people, and I know it's something on myself. I think family pressure is a big thing, especially if you were the first in your family to go to college, or you're the first to get a master's, or you're first to do the corporate thing. I think you so want to prove to your parents this is what they fought for. I have immigrant parents. This is what they came to this country for. This is what they spent their hard-earned money for you to go to college for. You want to show them this is the result of your hard work. And it's hard to tell them, like, I don't want to do this anymore, because you're disappointing them. You're telling them their fruits of their labor was a waste, essentially. And I feel like that's a lot of pressure that I feel like Black kids put on themselves, because unfortunately a lot of us, I feel like leave school having a family to take care of. Like whereas our white counterparts, they're like they're free to do everything for themselves because their family's taken care of.
I feel
Like, I have
they
older-
take care of them until they're like.
I have older parents, so like
you know.
whereas other people have 30, 40 years to worry about their parents aging, it's like 20 years for me. Like, I want to buy my parents a house. Like, that's quick for me as opposed to someone whose parent is 40 right now. Like, I want my parents to be not in a home. I want my parents to, like, not work until 70. Like, and there's things like that where I'm like, oh, should I be finding myself or should I be setting these stones to make it where everyone is good? So, like, it's like putting those kind of pressure on yourself. Like, you might have a sister or brother in college that your parents can't help out, but you can help them out. So, it's like, I feel like a lot of us as Black millennials have, like, people left behind we got to take forward with us.
It's so sad. It's very sad, but I definitely agree. I feel like I carry the weight of my family on me sometimes. Like, that's what pushes me to success.
Right.
Whatever that is, you know. That's what pushes me. Like, my family and the fact that I want all of my family to eat. I want all of my family to be happy. That's why I'm working hard to do all of this. Not to make me, like, I feel like to make me happy is to make my family happy.
Exactly.
So
which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
So you don't get to be selfless.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
For sure. And I think that in some ways, like, adulthood is really defined by the level of consequences that will come from your actions, right? Like, you not paying rent will have, like, detrimental consequences. And I think that, like, adulthood doesn't stop, like, if you need to fall back on your parents, right? Like, because technically, like, you can't really go back on adulthood, right? You know, like, even if you were to take steps back, it's like, dang, I gotta go back home, live under my parents' house. Like, you're still
You'll
an
feel like
adult.
a failure,
Right.
in a sense, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even, I mean, if I could, I would live with my parents. I ain't gonna lie. But they live in Mississippi and my job is in New York.
Right.
But if I could live with them, I would. But I just feel like if I was to go back, like, to backstep, feels like a failure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, that's the way that we frame it in our minds, right?
Which is sad because I feel like other cultures don't.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Feel the same way.
For sure.
So.
Well, we just gotta try to conquer our adulthoods.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
One conflict, one consequence at a time.
Definitely.